Okay, so how cool is that? First off, that's by the Exploratorium, so local, profiling the Mauna Loa Observatory. And they do so much at this observatory. They are a real resource. And it was the first place that we started consistently tracking carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So let's look at that data. Oh, there. Okay. So take a moment, read this graph, look at every little bit of it, and tell your neighbor, I'm going to give you about 20 seconds, what can be learned from this graph? What's it showing us? All right. So, hopefully you shared with your neighbor something about what's on the axes. First off, you can read the title. Remember, the title of a graph should tell you what you can learn from that graph. Carbon dioxide concentration at Mauna Loa Observatory. And this is for the week ending November 30th, 2022. So it's for up until yesterday. We're showing us the carbon dioxide concentration in parts per million. And that's for every million particles in our atmosphere. How many of that million are carbon dioxide molecules? So for every million molecules in our atmosphere, how many of them are carbon dioxide molecules? That's what it's asking. So we're seeing how many per million are carbon dioxide molecules. So here, most recently, the 28th at noon, we had about 417 parts per million molecules of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Okay. And we see that it kind of fluctuates a little bit. We've got our daily averages, we've got our hourly averages. I wonder what trends, if any, you might be noticing. Okay. But where's this missing data? Notice we don't have any data from the 29th or 30th. Any reason you might think for that? What's going on in the world right now? Well, I know you guys are out there shouting. There is a volcanic eruption at Mauna Loa right now. So they, at the Keeling curve on Twitter, had to shut down the observatory for the first time in decades. Lava's moving across the observatory road. And this eruption is disrupting our ability to accurately measure carbon emissions from this really important observatory. Of course, there are other locations where we're measuring carbon dioxide around the world. This is just the first place, and it's pretty iconic for that reason. But remember from our notes that volcanic eruptions emit lots of carbon dioxide. So, and other gases, atmospheric gases. So if there's an active eruption going on at Mauna Loa, you could imagine that there's going to be some skewed data in terms of the carbon dioxide amount. So we're going to be looking at data, that's still very recent, but not up until the last 2 days when the eruption's been going on. So what does this graph show us? What can we learn from this graph? Tell your neighbor. 15 seconds. Okay. So just a reminder, I don't know if I said at the beginning of the video, please make sure you're discussing with your neighbor so that you're not just like sitting there being a little sponge. Be active and critical and use your scientific skills and apply them to what we're seeing. All right, so here we're seeing a monthly record of carbon dioxide emissions or carbon dioxide amount, parts per million, at Mauna Loa Observatory. Are we seeing any trends? What are you noticing? Maybe a bit of an upward trend? More? I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining that. What would the slope be if we threw a line of best fit on there, a trend line? Would it be sloping upward, meaning an increase in carbon dioxide, or would it be sloping downward, or would there be no slope? Or do we need more data? Let's look at more data. All right, what are we seeing here? Tell your neighbor, 15 seconds. All right, so we're looking at 6 months of data now, and you might be noticing we've got a little bit of a trend. Of course, there are some little outliers there, but we're seeing over 6 months, we have the highest value toward the beginning of June, and then it decreases from 421 down to about 415 in October. And now we're seeing an increase again. I wonder why. Let's look at more data. Aha! As you look at this data of a year, make some observations, make some inferences. Why might we be seeing this trend over the course of a year? Tell your neighbor, 20 seconds, ready, set, go. What could explain this? Okay. I wonder what ideas you had. I wish I was there. But maybe Mr. Bro has paused the video and gotten your feedback. It's okay if you didn't. But what are we seeing here? We're seeing our high of about 421 at the beginning of June, and our low of about 415, 414 in October. And now it's increasing again. And it seems like it increases right there too. I wonder why. Here's 2 years of data. Does it confirm your inferences? Why or why not? 15 seconds. Okay. All right. So we're seeing this trend persisting over 2 years. We're consistently seeing the highest at about the beginning of June, around 420, and it looks about 421 at the beginning of June this year. And we're seeing our lowest, and of course we do have some outliers, but we're sticking with the trend. We have our lowest around late September, early October last year, and the same this year. So what could explain that? We call this the annual cycle. And don't worry, we're going to start doing some notes in a minute. The annual cycle, we're seeing that we have our highest amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere at the beginning of June. Where did that carbon come from? And then our lowest amounts at the beginning of October. Where did the carbon go? Think about what you know about plants over the course of the year, especially trees. In the summer, they are very lush and leafy, and then come fall, the leaves start to turn and start to fall until they are leafless, frozen throughout winter. And when spring comes, they start to, they're still leafless, but they're getting new buds and the leaves are about to grow back. So where did that carbon come from? So we see an increase in carbon dioxide from October through like the beginning of spring due to decomposition. Remember, those leaves that fall on the ground and they decompose, they break down, and bacteria is actively eating them. Our decomposers are eating them, and as they process that energy through cellular respiration, they're giving off carbon dioxide. Decomposition itself releases carbon dioxide and methane, but so do decomposers. And since there's no photosynthesis happening because there are no leaves, that photosynthesis isn't taking that carbon dioxide back in. Pretty cool. And where does it go? When those leaves grow back, photosynthesis happens again. Yay! And remember, respiration is still happening in the plant, but it's absorbing that carbon dioxide all throughout spring. Like as soon as the leaves sprout, it's absorbing carbon dioxide through photosynthesis all through spring and summer. And so there's less decomposition, more photosynthesis happening, taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, decreasing the parts per million in the atmosphere, all through summer until fall hits and the leaves fall once again and decompose. We call that the annual cycle, increasing decomposition and carbon dioxide throughout fall and till the beginning of spring. Lower rates of photosynthesis, all of that increases carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and then it decreases again as photosynthesis occurs at much higher rates through the swing of spring and through the summer, decreasing carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Pretty cool. So we'll notice this trend here. We see this annual cycle happening every year, but what about this upward trend? What could explain that? Talk about it. 20 seconds. Ready, set, go. Okay. All right, so we're going to be breaking this down in some notes in just a moment. But first, you're going to watch this really amazingly produced quick story of carbon dioxide that sums up what we just said. After this video, we're going to be doing some notes with our colors.